everyone to our last brown bag of the fall semester. My name is Igor Akpovo. I am an instructional designer here in OLAP. Happy Friday, and I hope your week has been productive. I'm joined here today by some of my colleagues from OLAP. We have Dr. Jason Johnston, Director of Online Programs, Dr. Jennifer Gramling, Director of Online Programs, Jason Brown, Video Production Manager. We have, who else? Tim here, our Video Production Specialist, Tanya, our instructional designer, and I hope I'm not missing anybody else from our team. If I miss anyone, I apologize. I can see everybody's screen right now. As you can see, today I'm joining you from our brand new studio. And so I think that Dr. J has one or two words to say to us, Dr. J, about the studio.
Yeah, and I'm also happy for Jason Brown to add anything to this as well, but we're so excited to have this studio open. Jason and his team have done an amazing job getting it rolling, and we are beginning to, I guess, two things. Say we're open for business. We've got, we're in the process of setting up the system for signups for some of the space that Igor is in terms of the faculty recording space. So hopefully you're all on the newsletter, and information will be coming out about that soon. And we are certainly taking consultations right now. These guys can record almost anything that you could throw at them. Well, you could imagine. We have capabilities now to record, and we're excited about new projects and creative projects and ways to engage our students in new ways. So yeah, so we're very excited. So anything else to add to that, Jason or Tim?
I was just going to say, yeah, the newsletter will definitely have information about how the signups will work. Additionally to that, we're also looking for people interested in being beta testers for these spaces and making sure that we have them set up in a way that's that makes sense to you as faculty members. If anything requires a long instruction sheet to use, I think that's bad design. So I want this to make sense to you all. So if anybody is feeling game to be a first customer in these rooms, for right now, until we get our sign up sheets going, if you just want to fill out the consult sheet on the OLAP website, that might be the easiest way of getting in touch with us and letting us know your interest in there. So
thank you, Jason. One more thing here. I'm putting together the schedule for the spring 2023 brown bag, and we still have a few spots left. And so if any of you is interested in leading a brown bag, please feel free to email me. I'll gladly meet with you so we can brainstorm some ideas. Lastly, our brown bag today will be recorded, and it will be available on our website next week. Now I am going to hand it over to Dr. Sally Harris, who is today's session leader. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself and get us started. Sally, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Igor. I am Sally Harris. I'm in the English department. I have been teaching hybrid courses since 2007 and fully online since 2015. I also teach in person too. So I run the gamut. And I have been at UT for over 20 years now. So I have some history here too. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do to try and create instructor presence online, as well as how some people define instructor presence and what it means to actually have that presence in the online asynchronous classroom. So let me share this with you. And Igor, if I can get a thumbs up to make sure it's looking good. Okay, great, thanks. I won't be able to follow the chat at the same time, but I will look at it afterwards, and I think Igor's going to have that too. So
Yes.
Great, thanks, Igor. So if you do have questions, you can put them in there, but there will be time at the end as well if anybody has questions or wants to share what they do in addition to all of this. So great. So creating instructor presence in asynchronous online classes. In fact, I think a lot of what I'll talk about here go for synchronous online classes too, because instructor presence isn't just lecturing or being with someone at the same time in the same room, as we'll talk about later. But so what I'll start with is talking about the definition of instructor presence, or what is instructor presence in an online classroom, and what I see it as. And then some ways to create a synchronous presence, which is what most people think of when they think of instructor presence, an almost synchronous presence, and then an asynchronous presence. How are you still creating that presence when you're not seeing them in real time or even communicating in real time? So first of all, a definition, and probably many of you guys here have heard of regular substantive interaction, that RSI that the government is now requiring for courses to be considered credit-bearing courses in an educational program. And that seems to sort of encompass some of the idea of presence. You need to interact with the students. You need to have created the material that helps the students interact with the course and the content. And also, of course, student instructor engagement. Are you actually engaging with the student? And I would argue that those require instructor presence, but they don't actually define instructor presence. There seems to be more of it. It's like greater than the parts of the. What I found, I've looked at some sort of instructional design sites from different universities, and this is kind of this quote kind of embodies what they say instructor presence is. And I like the idea of being there in your class. So I think it's more than just being there in your class, but that is one idea of being there. And there are different ways to be there, not always synchronously being there. At least I have had classes, and I know I've actually given in-person classes where I walk into a class and I am physically there, but I am really not present. I may be delivering the information, but I am not there with those students. My brain is a million miles away. I got so many things going on, and I leave and I realize, afterwards looking back, I was like, I wonder if those students understood any of what I said. I didn't get that presence when I can see the students are beginning to understand, or stopping to ask questions, or they're interacting a little bit with each other. That presence wasn't there. So I think that sometimes even in an in-person class, we don't necessarily always have that instructor presence, but in an online environment, it is harder to create. They want to see you as a real person behind the screen. And I thought this was interesting too about this quote, so that they can reach you when they have questions. That sense of, okay, I want to know you're there for when I need you there. So that was an interesting definition. Sheridan and Kelly actually asked students and did a survey of students as to what really helps develop instructor presence, or what did the students perceive as instructor presence. And one thing that I thought was interesting about this quotation is that the first part, it was what was important to students was that it made the course requirements clear. And that really doesn't have a lot to do with actually being there or having my face on the screen or anything like that. That's really in the setup, the course design of it. So that course design seemed to be an important part of presence. And then, of course, the clarity of information presented and timeliness in feedback, that seems to be important too. So Richard, I might be mangling the last name, but Lady Shusky, I liked this definition that he has. Teaching presence includes how the design and organization of the course has been laid out, and then how it is facilitated and how much direct instruction takes place. So that design and organization of the course actually helps, is part of the instructor presence there. And another, Stone and Chapman say that they realized, and after they did a study, that presence was individual. It was linked to teaching style and even the content, and then the way the instructor created that sort of feedback. And I felt a little bit better with that, because I see some of these instructors that we have, like Amy Ballone and Brian Stevens, and they have just all this incredible energy, and they're talking, and they're doing about 5 different things at once, and I'm like, I can't do that. I have a very different style, and my content is different too. And sometimes the content, even when I teach 2 different classes that have different content, my style is different because the content is different. So that made me feel better about, really working and trying to figure out what works best for me in terms of helping the students. And so this is what I came up with. And the instructor presence in an online class is that the instructor's guiding hand and voice, and that's not audio voice, but just sort of personality voice, are recognized throughout the elements of the course. And that guiding is really important, because I think it connects with the students, that it's not just about me presenting the information, but it's about me designing a course and creating a course that helps the students move through. And that's throughout all elements of the course. So moving on to how do we create this? How do I create it, at least in my classes? And of course, synchronous presence is what we often think of. And with small group meetings and individual conferences or scheduled chat sessions on IM. So for small group conferences or one-on-one meetings, I use email for them to sign up, or I use the Canvas sign up. But I know some people like to use You Can Book Me or Calendly or any of those sort of online booking times. And if that works for you, that's great. For me, my classes are small enough to where I can't say just email me if you want to meet. And I did check about a year ago, I think, to make sure that I could still call a class asynchronous if I required students to meet with me at some point at a scheduled time that worked with their schedule. It wasn't a set schedule, and it would just be once or twice throughout the semester. And it's like, yep, that can still be considered asynchronous. So I do require that in most of my classes, that they meet with me in small groups at least once during the semester, just to have a sense of, okay, we can meet individually if we need to. They know how it works, and I get a sense of them as well. But I can't do that throughout the semester, throughout the whole semester. I had a faculty member proposing to teach a class, and one thing this member wanted to do was said, well, I'm going to meet one-on-one with each of the students before each of the assignments is due. And there were 5 big assignments in the class, and I just thought, oh my gosh, no. There is no way. That is so exhausting. So we sort of talked about it in ways that he could still respond to students and provide feedback with students, but not overwhelm himself. So I do think that those small group meetings and the one-on-one meetings are important, or individual meetings are important, but you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Another way that you can create, or that I've created, a synchronous presence is scheduled chat sessions. You can do it through Canvas. I use Zoom because Zoom has a chat function, and I know all the students have it. Students also, most of them have GroupMe, but I don't like to use things that are outside of the system, and that's just me. Some people really like Slack to do that, or Discord. Some departments use Discord as well, and there are probably a number of other ways you could do it. But say, hey, between 10 and 11, I'm going to be on my Zoom chat. Jump in if you have a question, or be there, and I'm going to ask some bonus point questions or something, and sort of creating that immediacy there. But moving on from synchronous presence, which is kind of what we all expect or think of, or what I tended to at first think of when I thought of creating instructor presence, to a sort of almost synchronous presence. And that's individual group and class chats that are not necessarily, there's a scheduled time I'm going to be on here. And then of course, email. And one of the aspects of this, some of the definitions that I brought up at the beginning were, timely responses and timely feedback, and that can include email as well. So again, I use the Zoom chat in my classes. That really works well. I was at first worried about using it because I thought, I don't want to be sitting on my phone, or, it comes up on my computer too, and I don't want to constantly be responding to that. But for me, it's actually worked better because it reduces the number of emails I get from students, and students don't always email. And so they feel like they can, quickly ask a question here, whereas if they had to go email, they might not ask it. So I found this works well for me, just allowing that. And then with emails, I usually tell them, I give them, if I haven't responded within 24 hours, well, one business day, I say not on the weekends, but 24 hours, send me another one, because it probably means I've overlooked your email or something. I do think it is important, and I've always tried to respond within one day. Some people say 48 hours, and sort of setting whatever limit works is great. But I do on both of these set time limits so that I'm not, my students aren't expecting to get back to them at 10 o'clock at night if they text. I do really try to say I usually respond between 8 and 4:30 during the week. And for the first 2 weeks of the semester or 3 weeks of the semester, I really work hard to stick within those time limits so I'm not setting these expectations. But after that, I get a little more flexible, because sometimes it's just really easy for me to jump on, at 8 o'clock at night when I'm sitting doing work anyway, or something like that, to jump on and answer a question. But that's me. I'm okay with that. And I don't want the students to expect it. So I really try to establish those limits right at the beginning. And if I can't get back to an email, if somebody has sent me an email and there's too much in it and I can't quite get back to it and answer all those questions right away, I send an email and say, hey, I've got your email. I need some time to look at these questions. Let me get back to you next week. If I haven't gotten back to you by Tuesday, send me another email, just so that they know that I'm there and I'm working on it, that they haven't just sort of fallen into this cave of oblivion or virtual emptiness. All of that sort of synchronous or almost synchronous presence can get exhausting if that's the main way you're creating presence, because we don't want to be on all the time. And that is why I set those limits in my class, with the email and the Zoom chat and all of that. I can't be on all the time, and I don't want to be on all the time. So other ways that we may be able to create presence in asynchronously. And this is where most people really, I find, don't necessarily always think about creating this asynchronous presence. There are some elements here that you'll notice that people do sort of bring up again and again with pictures and videos and all of that. But there are some other ones that can be thought of as instructor presence, but aren't usually. Things like course design. Designing a course to reflect you as an instructor, if you can. I mean, if you're being handed a course that is not yours and it's already designed, that makes it a little more challenging. But if you can design a course, you can use that to create your presence. Announcements, sending them, scheduling things ahead of time, scheduling emails or scheduling announcements and embedded quizzes. And so I'll talk a little bit about those as we move forward. But in the course design, one thing that I've noticed with my classes that are on different topics, I've got a literature course and I've got some writing courses. The course design is a little bit different for each one because the content is different. And I really work to help create a design that reflects the way I want the students to move through the class. Now, somebody else who teaches a similar class may have a different way they like to move the students through the class. So therefore, in that course design, they're actually reflecting their presence. And as I set up the class, I'm making it very clear to the students what needs to happen when. I set up my modules so that they can access everything very easily. And that's where the instructor's guiding hand comes through. I really work to guide the students through the course so that they find it easy, and they're doing the assignments in the order in which I think will be the best for them. And so it's kind of like my stamp on the material. And this is how I think that it's going to really work and help them learn the material best if they get it in this order. And if you kind of think about it as an in-person class too, you take the handouts and you don't give them all out on the first day, or at least I don't. They don't get every single handout they need on the first day. They get them at points in the semester when it makes sense to have a handout, or when it makes sense to do an exercise after they've learned some things. So instead of just sort of putting it all out there, I scaffold it, and I make sure that they access it only when they've done all the other stuff. And so that really guides them through. It helps them also know that they've got everything done, and it makes it a little bit easier to find them if I put it all in the modules. And then over on the right of the screen, you'll see the homepage image, and that's sort of a good old standard, but I do think it is important. You have a picture of yourself or your GTAs or whatever on that homepage, because then every time they go to the course, they see you. Whether that's vanity on my part or not, I don't know, but they at least get to see a picture of me, when they enter the course, and that at least identifies the course with me in their minds too. So I know that's a good old standby, but I think it works, and I think it's worth mentioning. On the homepage, I also include a navigational video, and again, this goes with the guiding hand. I create a video specific for the course as to, how do they move through the course? Now, fortunately, once I've created one, until Canvas changes what its layout is, I can use that one. I may not be able to use it in all the courses, but if I teach that course again, I can use it again. And it's one I create rather than sending them to the Canvas, the general Canvas one, which is fine if you want to do that. But this, again, it shows me helping them and guiding them through the course. You can see in the screenshot of the video I've got, I've sort of circled what they need to do, but I've said my cursor is there to say, don't click from here, go to the modules. You won't be able to access it from here. So it kind of gives them a sense that I'm really there to help them through the course and setting it up, that I've designed it for them. I also use the scheduled announcements where I'll create a number of announcements to go out at the beginning of each week or at the beginning of each module, so that it just tells the students, hey, it's Wednesday or it's Monday, and this week you've got these things due on this day, and here's the link to get started with them. It's just a reminder, but again, that reminder helps them see that I am there in the course, that I've designed the course for them. And I can do all of that at the beginning of the semester. And then, of course, I'll pop in with different announcements if I need to, as needed, based on what's happening in the course or what I'm seeing. But setting those up earlier means that there's more time later, and you're not stressing yourself about creating that presence or doing that connection, sort of when you've got a lot of grading to do as well. At least for me, it's usually a lot of grading. So if I can set those up and know that those will send out as needed, the students are getting those reminders as if I were in the classroom, reminding them as they left the classroom, saying, don't forget, you've got this due next time, right? So that kind of announcement helps create that presence there. And if you can get them done ahead of time, it alleviates some of the burden later on in the semester. And then another thing for asynchronous presence, and this is kind of something we all talk about along with the visual of the image on the home page, including videos of your image. Now, that I actually was reading something that said that is not one of the most important elements of creating instructor presence, at least in the student perception. That wasn't something they listed as one of the top ways in which they felt the instructor was connecting with them or present in the class. But I think it does help. I know that there is a way to use Panocto to have, so the students can choose between my face, my PowerPoint, or both, or an overlay. But also, I don't always use PowerPoints. I am for some of the lectures. If I do, I'll try to have myself talking like this at first. I'll introduce it a little bit and connect it to the other parts of the course, so that they see that the course is designed in sort of this overarching narrative arc, right? That gives them some guidance through the course and how everything's connected, and then move on to the PowerPoint, where I might just be a little tiny box, or I might not even be on the screen at all. But sometimes I just give a weekly updates, and those are really good too. And actually, I found that I can reuse some of them from previous semesters of the same course, because the students are struggling with the same issues, or they've got the same sorts of questions. But those weekly updates, they're 2 or 3 minutes, and I just jump on, and they're very, very, they're casual. You know, it's like, hey, this is what I've been seeing in your work so far. Maybe you can start working on this, or make sure you think about this, and you've all done this really well. And 2 minutes there, I send it through an announcement, and I also post it in the modules. When I send it in an announcement, I send it as a link to it, so that because the video doesn't show in an announcement. So I always say, here's a video, you can link to it here. That I think takes it outside of studio, so I can't see who's watching it or not. But I don't always look at the insights, where it tells you who's watched and how many times, because that might depress me a little bit. But one thing, even if the students aren't always watching it, they know it's there. They know that I've sent something, so they know that I'm thinking about them, and that I've created this video that they can go watch. I also, and this is something I learned from Amy Ballone, is creating fun thumbnails, because I used to create thumbnails that were just the text, just sort of like, this is the title of the video. And that works really well in my professional writing courses. But in my literature course, in my introduction to drama, like, well, I can create fun thumbnails. They only see them for like a brief second, but it is kind of fun, I think. And it was fun for me to do too. So again, these are sort of more traditional ways that people think of creating instructor presence. With video lectures, one, I think, way to create instructor presence is through embedded quizzes. That I don't think is something that people typically think of as creating instructor presence, but to me, it reflects that time when I'm in the class and I'm looking at the students and I'm saying, okay, I can tell from their eyes they're not getting this, or somebody sort of moves and it's clear there's a question. Since I can't get that online, at the points that I think are really important in the lecture, and I want to make sure everybody's paying attention, I'll throw up the questions in the embedded quiz. And that's sort of my check-in. Is everything going okay? Do you get this? I give them unlimited attempts, so they can go back and take it as many times as they want and get a good grade, get 100 on it. But that is kind of my way of checking in with them. And the questions are things that I think are important about the lecture and that I want them to remember. So again, that's my personality coming through, my sort of presence there. So embedded quizzes is another way that I try and create that presence. And then, of course, the last two that we'll talk about, there's instructor feedback and discussions. And these are more commonly seen as a way to create instructor presence. But one thing that I struggled with at first was knowing, one, getting the students to read the feedback, and two, knowing how they see the feedback, where it comes to them. And so one of the things that I learned was, well, first they see the grade, it comes up, it flashes up, they get an alert that they've got a grade. And then the next thing that they can see are the comments, those assignment comments, and that's kind of the box on the left. And some people love to use that for really long comments, and I'll leave brief overview comments there, or if it's a discussion, maybe I'll just say, hey, this was a really good point, I appreciate, and leave something that just lets them know I read their discussion question, or I read what they were saying. So those assignment comments and the grade are kind of the two things that they really see most. But rubrics also, I think, can help create an instructor presence, even if you're not including a whole bunch of comments in the rubric, because you can use the rubric to write your own comments, but that's really time consuming too. But if you create good, strong rubrics, not really like the rubric that I've got a screenshot of here, that's not super wonderful rubric. But if you do create rubrics that kind of give the feedback that you would like, you give normally, the sort of consistent feedback that you think most people are getting all the time, then that works, because even that, you've created that feedback and the students can kind of see this is what the instructor's expecting. And that's a way to create that sort of interaction, or at least that presence there to let them know what I'm expecting. And then in the comments, as you'll see in that screenshot, I just say, I try to remember to always put something in the comments, even if it is, please see the rubric for an explanation of your grade, because the comments are what they see first. So that just lets them know I'm guiding them to the rubric, and then the rubric gives them that feedback. And again, that's a sort of connection there, a presence in the rubric as well. Even if it's just a copy and paste, please see the rubric. And there's now a comment bank too, that you could choose from if you've got a few that you like to use. So that's kind of helpful. And just putting something there, even if it's the same thing or, something from a bank, again, the students see it and it builds that sort of connection there, and they know that you're there. I also leave marginal comments. When they submit a paper, I think marginal comments are helpful to direct them to the specific areas that I'm talking about in my overall comments. And I will remind them in my comments. I say, overall, this is great. You need to work on this. Please see my marginal comments for more detailed reviews, so that even if they don't go back and look, they know it's there. They know I've included something else. So again, that's my sort of way of creating presence. I have been there. I have done that. And then finally, discussion boards as another way of creating presence. And this is a little trickier. It's one that people say, oh, jump into the discussion boards and show them that you're, present in the discussion and you want to help them along. What that can do, though, is that can quash their own discussions. They can start relying on you to jump in. And so it really depends on what you want them to achieve by using the discussion boards. As you'll see, the sort of the screenshot on the left with all of the tags and ats, that one, that's the new Canvas discussions and assignment or announcements, I think, and you can tag them, and people get emails if they've been tagged, if they set up their notification rights, which is another way to create presence, help them set up their notifications. But if they've been tagged, they're notified, which is wonderful and great, because then they can see that you have, responded to them. However, what it means is the way they've got it set up is that other students can't see that response unless they click that reply there at the bottom, and you can kind of see how it pops open. When the students see it, that one that's over on the right side doesn't pop open for them. They have to click reply. So if your intent is to just make sure that you're replying to individuals, that's fine, but not everybody can see it. However, on the other side is the more traditional discussion board. Now you can't tag people, the students can't tag each other, so it doesn't necessarily create that immediate response and discussion feeling. But the students, if I post in there, I usually try and post the first, 4 or 5, within the first day or two that it's open, and I'll respond to the first few that come in, so that the students who come after those first few see that I've been in there. So the ones that come in later or right near the deadline, those get a few comments on the in the speed grader comments. But in the actual discussion, if I'm not trying to get the students to answer each other's question and I'm just kind of getting them to think about things, I will jump in just really briefly. Hey, this is an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that. And then the students who come afterwards see that I am involved and see that I'm there. So it's not ideal, because the person who I'm responding to doesn't always come back and see that I'm there. But there are some ways to use discussions to do that. However, I do think that course design and the course layout is a really interesting and important way to help create that presence at the beginning from the get-go, so that you're always there. So whether it's synchronously, almost synchronously, or asynchronously, I do think you can work to create your presence and it show that guiding hand, your guiding hand and voice throughout the elements of the course. So I can stop here and see where we are with questions or comments. Woo.
Yeah, quite a few comments there.
Uh-huh. Yes, the instructions and content, Durin, with the you, I, and we. I do use we a lot, and that's for face-to-face classes as well. That sort of creating that this is our class, not my class, but our class. That we're working through this together, and that kind of brings them into, so in sort of a linguistic way that works. And again, I even in my in-person classes, I use that. And then the stock picks. Oh, I like that, a customized avatar. I tried to do that with Bitmoji, and I just really didn't like what I got, so I didn't do that. But yeah, I think that's kind of neat to do the avatar there. So let's see. And Kristen asks, schedules, announcements is better, same, different than weekly emails? You know, I don't know, because what I try to do, Kristen, is for the announcements, I use announcements generally for my online classes and for my in-person classes now, just because then I don't have to copy and paste the course list names into it, and it sends it to them as an announcement. And I think when they see that Canvas announcement, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is class related. But that might be something where it's just helpful to ask your students, hey, do you pay more attention to Canvas announcements or to emails from me? That would be, you know, just something to check in with them and see what's going to work for both, best for either. And yeah, Durin, I didn't mean to say once you've got all your announcements set up, you don't jump back in. Definitely jump back in if you've got something that comes up that you don't know, or if there's something that happens in the events that connects so well to what your class is about. Yes, definitely. So, and thank you, Jason. And oh, that helps, Michelle. Yes, they're more inclined to check announcements. And then at the top of the Canvas page, and that is set through, you've got to go into the course settings, and I think you have to click advanced to show if you want 2, 3, 1, how many announcements you want to show at the top of the home page. And yeah, Michelle, this is one thing that I've struggled with, is trying to figure out how the students see their feedback. And that is, I think, really important. And when you're designing your course and when you're thinking about creating your own presence, is, you know, how do you get them to see your feedback, and how does your feedback show up to them? And it's different for the app, and it's different from there if they're on a tablet. And so that is something that's important to think about. Michelle, yeah. Announcements in Canvas. So feedback. Oh yeah, that's really important, Jeff. The positive feedback as well as the sort of critical feedback. But yes, sometimes it's really good. And I don't know if I know the message students who function in there. I tend to use it more for those students who are missing assignments and say, you know, hey, don't forget this was due, or are you doing okay? You know, do you need to meet? But the ones maybe who did really well is say, hey, great job. Thanks for getting this in. Even just turned it in. Thanks for your assignment. I'll have them back in, you know, 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever my schedule looks like. So wow, Durin, you're amazing. A tracking sheet, spreadsheet to keep track of the announcements, or to keep track of who you contact too. That's pretty good.
This builds on your comment about not wanting to quash their own discussion. And so if I'm going to jump in and only talk to a few folks and then step away, it's possible for me to miss somebody. And I had a couple of different students in my asynchronous online who were quite upset because they felt like I never talked to them. And so that's what made me, I mean, I just have a roster, a piece of paper, and it's just a little check mark. Okay, I talked to these 3 this week. Okay. And oh, I'm leaving Susan out. All right, we need to make sure I talk to her, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. And if you've got smaller classes, you can do that too. And the comments in the speed grader, if you're doing that, that can kind of help with that too. If you know that, oh, this was a great comment, but I didn't respond to it. If you have a spreadsheet, I didn't respond to it in the chat or in the discussion, I can respond to it in the comments there as well, so that they know that I have read their comments. And even for me, even if it's just something as like, copy and paste, thank you for your post, I really liked your ideas about, or interesting comments about so and so and so and so. So really all I have to do is add a short sentence at the end, or even just a half a sentence at the end, to let them know that I did read it. So yeah, just the feedback from current students to know what they look at and how it is. And as Canvas changes too, the student view doesn't always work. And because I can't see groups in the student view, and that bothers me to no end. But oh, bye, Michelle. But Igor and Rosie over in OIT helped me to set up a sandbox class where I am the teacher, but I've got instructors in there, my colleagues in there, so that I can say, hey, can you guys do this? And then tell me what you see, or, I'll set up something and say, what do you see? How does it look? Can you let me know? And then they can say, hey, can you do this? And so I can see how it looks on my end. And I think that really kind of helps. It's easier to do that in the summer and over the breaks, because we're all just so busy during the school year, but or during the semester. But that helps too, to have that sort of sandbox place, so we can see what the students are seeing. Yes, Duran, yeah. Do I have any advice new to online? How they can manage asynchronous communications, such as email or feedback. What specifically were you talking about, Jennifer?
All of it, I guess. Or I mean, I just know that from a time management perspective, it can kind of be overwhelming, I think, for instructors who are really new to this. So maybe even if you just pick one of those and see what advice you would have.
Yes, for communications, set limits. One, I mean, that just, I think is really important. Don't, sometimes I remember when I first was teaching online, I'd have students email at 10 o'clock at night with the assignment due at midnight, and I'd be like, oh, I have to answer their question, and no, I really didn't. It's an English class, it's okay. And if it's something, if it was an emergency or something, like where the student was saying, I just can't submit it, something came up, I can respond to that in the morning too. That's something where, I can let the students know ahead of time. I let the students know ahead of time. I say, if you have something come up and you email me really late at night, I can still get that email in the morning and still work through things. But if you communicate with me early, know that means that I will get it, and I will be able to retrofit. I will be able to go back and change things if necessary. So, setting those limits and setting those expectations, and setting up also a way, letting them clearly know that if you don't get back right away, they don't need to panic. That you will still get their communications, and be able to work with them even if it's past the due date, if they're getting for you, you know, at 10 o'clock, but sort of setting up that those your own limits as well as expectations from the students that will help them know not to panic. If you love texting or, you know, the instant messaging, if that is your shtick, if you are really good at that, then do that. You know, set up something on Slack or on the Zoom chat, because that's supported by UT and the students all have that already. Then if you know that that is something that makes it so much easier for you, then email, do that. I know some instructors also might use Teams. I'm not very familiar with Teams. I'm kind of learning it right now, but the students, I believe, all have access to Teams. And if that's a way that makes it more manageable and keeps it all in one area for you, if you're familiar with Teams, then that's a way you can go. And that's not to say do all of this at all. Don't do it all. There's no way to do every single new technology. You know, my sense is you choose what works best for you, and it's different for each, you know, different for each instructor. I tried Flipgrid, and it didn't really work for me or the content that we were doing, so I'm not using it. And that's not so much for presence, but just for sort of creating community in the class. It just really never, whether I used it wrong or whether it was the content we were working with, it just didn't work. I know Amy Balone has had a great success with it, or similar things. So that would be my advice. Don't do everything. Choose what works. So well, thank you, Chris. Thanks. Yeah, Jeff, definitely. I like that experimenting and getting feedback. And I've told my students, I said, this is new. I'm trying this first time. Please let me know how it works. I think that's good. And they like that. They like that. But yeah. Yes, boundaries are important. Yeah, definitely. And I don't give my students my phone number for text. That's one of the other reasons I do it through Zoom. It's all work, and it all is kept at work. You know, Zoom chats are work. Anything that comes up on Zoom chat, I know is work or students or whatever. So that keeps it separate for me, and creates those limits that way. So I know I don't have to look at it if it's, you know, 8 o'clock at night. It's not my daughter, so I don't care. Any advice for mini term? Oh my goodness. Get as much as you can done before the term starts. Yeah, basically I would say, you know, any sort of announcements that you can get that are scheduled and everything up as is in advance, so that it's ready to go when you hit it. And that way you can just focus on those communications and guiding the students through what you've already created. So yeah, good luck. Thank you. I know we've gone over time now, but thank you. Igor, I'm sorry if I talked a little too long.
No, we didn't go over German. In fact,
okay.
Either. I was going to say for the advice on for a mini term, if you plan on teaching the mini term, we in OLAP are glad to meet with you and help you think through these strategies that she's discussed here. There are many ways to go for a mini term. We can discuss all of these here now, but so feel free to email us if you need help with designing and organizing your course, because I remember one of the things that Sally, you shared, the quotes, one of them mentioned the design and organization, right? And so if you're planning for a mini term, maybe that's where you probably might be able to start at the design and organization stage. But again, we will be glad to meet with you. Do we have any other comments or questions?
Thank you guys. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. It's good to see so many familiar names and faces here too.
Thank you, Sally. It appears we don't have any more comments or questions. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful presentation today, Sally. Again, thank you everyone for being part of Brown Bag Experience this semester. We come back again late January. And please email me. I'm looking for session leaders for the spring semester. I will be glad to meet with you anytime you email me. And thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the semester. And happy Thanksgiving in 2 weeks.